and a very warm welcome to Titanic Echoes TV. With me, Mike Prince, and our special guest today is Andrew Lound, the historian and expert on Titanic. So a very good day to you, Andrew, and good to see you. And I see you've got some of your books in the background.
Yes, hello, Mike. Yes, it's good to see you as well in these days. And yes, I have my my current four books out at the moment behind me. So yeah, good fun to do the research. More research being done now on new books.
Well, we'll talk about your books in a moment. But first off, we're recording this in the time of the pandemic in 2020. And of course, things have been very quiet, but there's still been a few news stories going the rounds about Titanic, as there always has been since 1912. And I think that you and I would agree that there always will be news stories about the Titanic. I've noticed that the Devizes, there's an auction house in Devizes in Wiltshire that will soon be auctioning the collection of the fifth officer, Harold Lowe. Do you know much about him?
Yeah, Harold Lowe. Yeah, Harold Lowe is one of the big heroes of the night. Many people know the film A Night to Remember, where you've got Kenneth More playing Charles Herbert Lightoller. A lot of the things that's shown in that film, it was actually carried out by Harold Lowe, not by Lightoller. But for a movie, you can't have too many characters or people get confused. So Lowe is very important because Lowe is the one who pulls the firearm out and fires it down the side of the ship, in order to try and quell the crowds racing towards him, to try and calm everybody down a little bit. So he's quite important for that. In the movie Titanic, the Cameron film, they really bump up Harold Lowe correctly. So if anyone watches that film, the character playing Harold Lowe is bang on the money. That's exactly what he did that night. A very brave man. Took control of a lifeboat, and he was the only one to go back to look for survivors in the water, by transferring passengers from his lifeboat into another one, and then rowing out into the mass of people. There were probably about 1,000 bodies in the water. It was an hour after more or less an hour after he got off the boat to do it, but nonetheless, he took his lifeboat back. And in the film, they have little torches and flashlights. There were no flashlights. The men in the lifeboat simply leaned over and felt people in the water to see if they were alive or not.
That's a fascinating story, and so a real hero on the night. And I did see in one item on the internet that it's alleged that he told Bruce Ismay off and said, wait, and so quite something. Yeah.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Bruce Ismay, the managing director of the company, of course, he's not sure what to do, and he's running up and down the boat deck, and eventually gets behind Fifth Officer Lowe, who's trying to lower a boat. Ismay gets carried away and goes, lower away, hurry up. Lowe loses his temper, turns around to him, tells him to shut up and mind his own business, or he'll end up drowning a lot of these people. And the two men helping to lower the boat are just ordinary seamen. And one turns to the other and says, whoa, look at that. There'll be trouble about that when we get back to New York. And he was probably the most optimistic man on the ship at the time. But yes, he told off Ismay. Ismay sort of looked a bit sheepish, walked off to the other side of the ship, where eventually Murdoch was lowering lifeboats, and eventually, of course, then Ismay jumped into that lifeboat and was freed from the ship. But yes, Lowe was the man who really got to grips with the whole thing. It's very well shown in the movie Titanic as well. Very well done and absolutely accurate, which is the beauty of it. He was the get up and go and got it done sort of man. But that was the nature of him, and quite a Welshman, but very much a shy sort of man, and didn't like the publicity when he got back. He preferred just to sort of sit back a little bit and carry on what was a successful career.
And he lived to a reasonably good age, didn't he?
Yes, he did. I mean, after surviving that, I thought he deserved to. And he did, and continued his career in the shipping industry. So he was very successful, never reaching the heights as perhaps he would have done had he not been associated with Titanic. And that was covered with all the officers who survived. It was almost as if White Star then wanted to forget Titanic and push the officers as far away as they possibly could.
Well, I'm sure that there'll be some big bids there's a telescope that's coming up in the auction, buttons from his tunic. There'll be all sorts of prints and photographs and a whistle. I think that they are declaring that it's possibly not the whistle that he used on Titanic,
No,
but it's one that
no.
had been in his ownership for many years before he sailed on the Titanic.
Yes, the whistle that he actually had on the Titanic is known. It's in existence. And those people who watch the movie Titanic, you'll see Fifth Officer Lowe, the actor playing the role, take a whistle out and blow it. That is the actual whistle. So when you hear that in the film, that is the real whistle Officer Lowe blew on that night.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's fascinating,
Yeah.
Andrew.
Oh,
Well, Andrew, you're full of information. Yeah.
Yeah, it changes your perspective when you hear that again, because suddenly you realise, gosh, that is the whistle. And suddenly you get this sense of creepiness around the back of you. It does, gives me, I got it now, this feel of coldness down the back of my spine to think that was the whistle that night.
Goodness me. Now, here on Titanic Echoes, we'll from time to time be doing a review of the news stories and the fresh news stories that come out very often during any year as they roll by, not just big anniversary dates to mark the tragic loss in the Atlantic, but you're a great man to keep us up to speed. Now, one other news item is that there's articles that I see from time to time talking about the new theme park in China. It seems to be taking an awful long time to come to fruition.
It is. I've seen some photographs of it. Information is very sparse, but the photographs I've seen of it are absolutely fantastic. They're obviously building it out of modern materials, and it is a theme thing. There isn't a plan for this one to sail. Because there are two concepts being done at the moment. The Chinese are completely obsessed with Titanic. They love it, like everyone. Most of the world is obsessed with Titanic, but they love the whole thing. So they're building this full-size, absolute bang-on replica of the ship that people can go and visit, and that should be quite interesting, shall we say. It should be very exciting to go. I mean, the fact you could stand on a perfect replica of the ship would be quite creepy, and I'd have to do it. Yeah, it'd be great. So it'd be interesting to see how far that actually gets on. They've done that with other projects, of course. China do lots of interesting projects like this based on historical themes. So they actually have quite a good interest in history, which is quite nice. I mean, when I was a curator of a museum, the last visitors I ever had were two members of the Chinese embassy who wanted to come and talk about English and Birmingham history in particular.
Oh, that's fascinating. And I think one of the things that I've noticed, and I just wrote it down, that the Chinese, I mean, there were a few Chinese passengers on board, but they see that the stories that have come out, and the true stories, some of them, reflect a noble attitude, because Titanic, if you like, concentrated during those dreadful hours in the North Atlantic, some very brave things. I know that there were some not so brave acts, but it concentrates that the human spirit, which the Chinese, really salute, was there on the night.
Absolutely, and this is one thing that actually comes out, because there are comments about this and the way people behaved at both inquiries. And one Japanese stowaway comes out very big, brilliant, man. And the Chinese who were on board were seen as very brave, stoic, got on with the job, sorted themselves out, helped other people. And that's quite interesting. That came out, and it was regardless of race. When push came to shove, everybody got in and tried to sort themselves out quite good. There were some interesting remarks by Lightoller at the American inquiry, but wasn't meant to pick out a particular group of people at all, really, because you find that in any situation, regardless of the race of the people, there are some who are going to be brilliant and some who are going to be completely idiots. But there's nothing you can do about that. It's based on the nature of the character of the individual.
Thanks, Andrew, for that. You've got some book titles behind you. I know a couple of them. Just talk us through. We haven't got a huge amount of time, Andrew, just to looking at the clock. But if you have a quick word or two about your books.
Yes, if we look at because we're Titanic, the Midland, made in the Midlands, RMS Titanic by History Press. This looks at really the Midlands connections with the Titanic itself, and there are staggering amounts. About just over 70% of the interiors of Titanic were actually manufactured in Birmingham in the Black Country. But then again, every ship that sailed from Britain, 70% of the interiors were made in Birmingham, the Black Country. It was a major contributor to it. And a lot of people served on the ship were actually from the Midlands. We have one of the bandsmen, of course, John Wesley Woodward. We have a lot of passengers on board the ship who actually came from the Midlands. There's an eloping couple from Worcester, which is quite a remarkable story in itself. And you've got a man called Hemming who was helping Lightoller launch lifeboats that night, who was staggeringly brave when you actually look at his details. So we went into the details in this quite nicely.
And you've got Life in the Balance there. I think that's
yes. Life in the Balance is about William Hipkins, first-class passenger, managing director of Avery's, and he died on the Titanic. A very interesting character in his own right, Birmingham man, self-made man, which is always a good time. And a book about the lunatic astronomy, which is the Lunar Society and their astronomy work, Matthew Bolton, James Watt. And my latest book, which is out, is called The Power of Balance, which is the story of W.T. Avery's in the First World War. And the critical element to industry in any period of time is weights and measures. And Avery's were responsible for revolutionising weights and measures in British industry during the war, which solved a crisis that we had, which was happening in 1915 and then in 1916 when shells were either exploding too early, not exploding at all. And that was simply about incorrect weighing.
And so Avery solved the problem, but unfortunately the former boss of Avery wasn't there to see that result.
He wasn't. He died beforehand, and Gilbert Vile was the man in charge at the time, a remarkable character. And some of the research that went into that was quite surprising. Facts came again, as usual. You always find some amazing things when you start looking at these history subjects.
Well, I know that's what you're very good at, and I hope that we'll do more of these interviews here on Titanic Echoes to dig deep into your knowledge bank and also the fresh intelligence that you managed to prize out of your very diligent research. So to take a look at your good self for a moment, what was the trigger for you becoming fascinated by RMS Titanic?
Yeah, I saw the film A Night to Remember when I was 5 years old on TV. And my dad said that really happened. I went, oh, really? Did it? That's interesting. So I had a general interest. And when I started work, my first, what I always call my proper boss, Harry Seaborn, fantastic character, died sadly a few years ago. He was interested in Titanic and introduced me to the Titanic Historical Society in the United States. When I had some documents from them, I found William Edward Hipkins from Avery's. Well, I knew Avery's was a local firm and started doing the research, and I thought it'd take me about 6 months to do the research into him. And 40 years later, here we are still doing it. But yes, that was the spark, really. And it's one of those subjects that you dive into it, it sort of absorbs you then into other areas and facets. And it comes over well. Cameron does it well in the film, where you've got essentially a treasure hunter trying to find the heart of the ocean. And at the end of the film, he turns around and says, you know something, I never really got it till now. And suddenly, that's it. It takes you over. It's a fascinating subject, but everything in life is in that subject. Everything is there for you to study. Bravery, cowardice, confidence, engineering, disaster. It's all there in that story, in that one story. Quite remarkable.
Well, that's something we really do share. That was A Night to Remember, that marvellous film. When I was a child, I saw that film, and that's what got me going as well. So snap on that. In terms of looking to the future, I mean, I know you'll soon, hopefully after the pandemic, excuse me, is over, you'll be resuming your lecture tours, and that includes tours talking about astronomy, isn't it? And
that's correct. Yes, yes. Of my degrees, the principal degree I had was actually it's a science degree. Yes, with an emphasis on planetary science. And I go around doing a lot of presentations about planetary science and subjects like that. I do what's called the urban spaceman, where I have a spacesuit, which I can talk to children at schools and things like that. And this is a lot of work which I've done for many years. It's gone in parallel actually with the Titanic. I have many parallels of what's going on in my life, and that's just one of the main facets to it at the moment. And hopefully organisations will be coming back, and I'll be able to go around giving them hopefully the benefit of my what I call dramatic presentations. The idea is we not just give a lecture, we're in costume, we have props, music, images, and I get very thespian about it and act around, which is good fun.
And you're happy enough to go anywhere in the UK. What about overseas?
Yes, I have. I've done a lecture tour in Libya many years ago, which was good, and that was about astronomy with the Libyan people, and that was great fun. And I've been to Australia and the United States and Europe. Yes, I'll go anywhere. That's it. Always available, never free.
Okay, Andrew. So to round off the discussion, I mean, soon we'll be talking, I hope, again, and you'll be able to catch up on our talks here on Titanic Echoes. But I would like to say to anybody joining us on Titanic Echoes TV that our film Children on the Titanic is there for you to take a look at. It's on Amazon and other platforms as well. So do check that out. And when you do, if you haven't seen it, you'll see Andrew there as our expert who features in many segments during the production. And the film was made, it's a musical docudrama, and so that there's a fictional storyline backed up by expert opinion from Andrew and visits to a couple of museums. So do take a look at that. You can take a look at how to view it here on Titanic Echoes. And Andrew, back to you for a moment to talk about your books. Where are they available from?
Yes, they're available on Amazon. You can go into Amazon, or you can go directly to my website, which is andrewlound.com. So you can go on there and you can contact me, and we can sort anything out there or ask any questions you like, really. We can join in the fun.
And one last point, Andrew. I often ask this of people who have a particular fascination for Titanic, and yours is a huge fascination. If you could meet one person who was on board that night, who would you like to meet?
William Edward Hipkins. Lots of things I need to ask him. I need to ask him about his wife, who we can't locate. We've got no details of her, but he's the man I'd like to. I've known about him for so long. He's the one I want to talk to, discuss things with. Yeah. So
just to remind everyone that the gentleman you just mentioned was in fact the top man, the chairman of Avery Weights and Measures and Scales, that I'm sure many of us have checked our weight on over the years. And he lived, well, obviously up until 1912, but he must have been born in the 1860s.
1857, yeah. January the 1st, 1857, yeah, to 14th of April, 1912.
And a quiet man and there's a headstone to him in a graveyard in Birmingham, England, in the Jewellery Quarter, but he's not buried there. I mean, he was lost at sea, wasn't he?
He was. There is a memorial place on the family plot. There's a family plot at Warstone Lane Cemetery, and the Friends of Keyhill Cemetery do well to keep it up and things like that, which is really good. And they do tours, and they'll take you to see the plot actually, and that's where the only public memorial is to him. There is a private memorial which I replaced at Avery's at Soho Foundry, which I replaced because after it had disappeared in the 80s. But that is the public place where you can actually go and remember William Edward Hipkins, and his whole family is actually buried there.
I see. Well, Andrew, thanks very much indeed for joining us today. Let's hope this pandemic, all the restrictions ease, and that you'll soon be back on the road giving your lectures. Best of luck with your new book and the books that I'm sure will follow. And may I ask anybody who picks up this this podcast on Titanic Echoes, if you have any questions you'd like to put to us and to put to Andrew, do get in touch. The contact details are on the website. So for now, thank you very much indeed, Andrew. And thank you very much indeed for watching.